This
is Democracy,
a podcast that explores the interracial, intergenerational, and intersectional
unheard voices living in the world's
most influential democracy.
Welcome to our new episode of This is Democracy. Today we're going to talk about unions. We've just celebrated Labor Day, which is a very important moment in our history and in our society. And we live in a time when unions are present but not often understood or discussed enough. And their role in our society, the role unions have played, will play, and continue to play in the growth of our democracy is going to be our discussion today. We have with us some fantastic experts to talk about these issues. We have Yvonne Flores, who's the president of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. She's the president of Local 1624, which is for the city of Austin and Travis County. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you so much for letting me be here with you today. I'm very excited, very happy to talk about unions.
Well, we're delighted that you're here. Thank you. And we also have my colleague and friend, Professor Jackie Jones. She's the chair of the Department of History here at the University of Texas. She's also the president-elect of the American Historical Association. And among the many great books that Jackie has written, she's written quite a lot about unions in American history. Jackie, welcome.
Thanks, Jeremi. It's great to be here.
Wonderful to have you on. We have, of course, our scene-setting poem from Mr. Zachary Suri. Zachary, what's the title of your poem?
Images of Madison, 2011.
Let's hear it.
From the very beginning, I have been touched by unions. 5 years old when I started kindergarten in Madison, Wisconsin, birthplace, Bethlehem for progressivism. And one of my earliest memories is of walking the Capitol grounds, holding my father's hand, watching my teachers strike with big handwritten signs against the cold, locked doors. And from the very beginning, I have seen the look, the faces of so many, and I have understood what it means to be united. 100,000 people marching up State Street towards the center of my state. And staring from above so many years later, I can see myself, my very facial expressions, unfold, molded in wonderment at the familiar face of my teacher, folded in a tight windbreaker against the winter wind. And it takes a kind of courage to stand in a Wisconsin winter and scream about truth against someone who will not listen. And it takes a particular kind of certainty to close schools for days on end, to change the course of 1,000 kids' education. And it shows a special type of power. And I can still see that image today, pizza boxes being passed deep into the gathering crowds, a whole city shut down for the sake of education, the cause of public sector unions publicly displayed in the union between the gathered people of so many different sectors of industrial Wisconsin, beneath barren trees. And there is some early aughts pop song whose name I can't remember, whose lyrics in my mind will always be the chanting interpretation of the unions in the Capitol ground.
It brings back a lot of memories.
Wow.
That was great. Great set.
What is your poem about, Zachary?
My poem was really about this personal experience I had when I was 5 years old in Madison, Wisconsin. But more so, it's about how unions touch all of us in our daily lives. Whether we see them as good or bad, it's something that very much influences our society and us as people.
Excellent. And that's a perfect place for us to turn to you, Yvonne. Many people might not have even heard of AFSCME, which is, I believe, the largest union in the United States now. What does your union do?
My union here locally in Austin, we actually represent between 32 and 3,300 union members, and that includes specifically City of Austin and Travis County employees. I've been the president for about a year, and what we do is we basically offer, it's basically a democracy where we come together and we have elections. And the elections are very important on who serves on the board. We also have elections on who we're going to be supporting and endorsing for local government elections, which is really important. And I think that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about, because union has to have the political muscle that's sitting in the local offices that are going to be standing on our issues. And so whether it's wages or increase in health insurance or safety at the workplace, I mean, all of that matters, because if you have a political person with you that's going to be standing on those issues, it gives us a voice. But if we have somebody who's not going to be standing with those issues, we're pretty much powerless. So I'm very proud to say that out of the 5 county commissioner positions, we have at least 3 that are AFSCME 1624 union members. And the city council, I know for a fact that we have at least 9 out of the 10 that are union members.
Right.
But it's basically all of us coming together and having an elective voice that is very important to our positions and our jobs.
And you made the connection to democracy, which is obviously crucial to us,
Yes.
all as citizens, and particularly this podcast. How do you make sure that your union is representative of the voices of workers? Because one of the stereotypes is that unions sometimes in the past have not been as representative.
Right. Well, I think it's very important because of the fact that the people that serve on our board are City of Austin employees and Travis County employees. That's first and foremost. I mean, in order to serve on the board, in order to be an active union member with 1624, you have to be a year in good standing union member paying your dues. So it's not like the general public. I mean, these are employees who are actually working. I'm a rank and file officer. I mean, a rank and file employee myself. I've been with Travis County for 19 years. I'm an administrative associate with Travis County Health and Human Services. And so that is important to me.
Sure.
It's something that's just not like of the mindset that, in the political realm, it's just so depressing because you see all the money that has to be involved and how much has to be donated and the election campaign and all that. And this is what's really awesome is the fact that these are just working class people that are coming to the table together about issues that are important to them. And then we take it to the next level on how we can initiate and implement those for them.
That's a great description. Jackie, as a historian who's studied unions, how do we understand their place in American history?
Well, first of all, I think we should go back and look at the stereotype of the union worker. Many people, when they think of unions, think of a factory worker,
right.
a man, a white man. And that actually was true for many years. It's over the last couple of decades, obviously, that the union movement in this country has been transformed. And now it is a more diverse movement. Women, like Yvonne, play a really important role as leaders. We can look at SEIU, the Service Employees International Union. The locus of union activity to some extent is Nevada with service workers, the hotel, the hospitality industry. So the face of the union movement has changed. Zachary's poem was about teachers.
Yes.
And teachers throughout the country over the last few years have shown what power there is in collective action, in work stoppages, in political clout, in bringing their issues to the public. So it is a more diverse movement. I mean, in a way, it's a sad story about unions. For much of American history, they were very discriminatory.
Right.
They kept Black people out, they kept white women out, and they tended to be fraternities in a certain way. So this is all very hopeful. On the other hand, the height of the union movement in terms of numbers was around 1955 when 35% or so of all American workers belonged to a union. Today it's about 10.5%. And I think public employees are more unionized than the employees of private companies today. The union movement is under assault. It really is under assault by the powers that be. And it faces specific challenges. We're in a gig economy
Right.
where so many people are solo operators and they don't have the protection that a union would afford them. And there is, I think, there are a lot of misapprehensions about unions, misunderstandings about what they do, but they've been a critical part of American history. And just one other thing, between about 1945 and 1980, we had what was called the Great Compression. And that was a time in American history when inequality was not as great as it had been, and it was not as great as it is today. And unions are a major factor in the Great Compression. It's when we find President Reagan in the 1980s going after the air traffic controllers that this public animosity almost toward unions really kicks in. So we should realize that unions are a great anti-poverty strategy, that they advocate for a higher minimum hourly wage, and really workers have have a very difficult time having their voices known and making their demands known without the backing of a union.
Absolutely. And it's important to reaffirm, Jackie, that the data speaks for itself, that the rise in union membership in the United States after World War II correlates with decreasing inequality. It also correlates with American economic growth. So we have this period that you referred to in the 1940s and 50s when the economy is growing, the average wage goes up, and the average worker or more workers work for unions, and inequality decreases in American society. Jackie, why do so few people know that? Why do these facts that you and I take for granted, why do they not get talked about more?
I think there is a general idea that we're all individuals and that there's something inherently un-American about people joining together and engaging in collective action. That prejudice against unions is long-standing. If we go back to the late 19th century, the effort to organize unions was a bloody one. A lot of resistance from corporate leaders who hired private security forces and could rely on local police forces. This notion that somehow all workers prosper or don't because of their own individual effort, I think makes a lot of people suspicious of unions, which is so ironic because corporate power in this country has always been collective, right? We've always seen corporations banding together.
Chambers of Commerce, for
exercising, bringing these companies together. And the idea that you should have an individual worker standing alone against these vast forces is really quite striking and not at all conducive to equality or democracy.
And Jackie, as a historian, what do you say in response to those who argue, well, unions reduce efficiency, unions reduce innovation?
I just don't see the logic of that argument. What happens, obviously, is that employers feel they have an incentive to mechanize, to automate, to use robotics, to increase efficiency and productivity, and in the process to eliminate the jobs of working class people. So there is a tension, obviously, within capitalism, which seeks efficiency, which seeks stability and predictability on the one hand, and the well-being of working class people in this country. So if we want to look and say, what advantages workers, increases in wages, increases in benefits, better working conditions, safer working conditions, those things are only secured through union activity, it seems to me, at least historically.
Right. Yvonne, do you find, especially in a state like Texas, that you face a lot of resistance as a union organizer and leader?
I think locally I don't. I love the fact that with the Central Labor Council here in Austin, AFSCME is actually the biggest one that represents that council. And we just had our fish fry this past Friday, August 30th.
I heard about it.
Yeah, August 31st. I'm sorry.
The fish was great.
It was great, and we had an awesome turnout. But again, that's what union means to me. You walk out of there so rejuvenated and with such high morale because you see these union brothers and sisters coming together with public officials that know that they need us when it comes to election time. And everyone was given an opportunity to speak. And again, it's like a morale booster because that is what matters, is the fact that people are listening to us as workers. And we have elections coming up. I think that's why it's really important that on my stance is that I try and get people involved with the voting initiative. You know, Texas is one of the states that has the lowest voter turnout, and that is sad. And so we try and connect the union strength that we have and connecting it with the initiative and getting people out to vote, because we can't wait till after the damage is done that we get somebody representing an office that's going to be totally against our issues. But I think locally, the Central Texas local government level with unions, I feel very positive about it. I mean, I've been part of the union since 2006. I served on the board as a Travis County representative and then recording secretary and now president. And I've seen the increase. And I think it's very important to state right now that the younger generation are totally making an impact with labor unions,
Really?
which gives me so much hope. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's probably connected to the fact that Bernie Sanders in 2016 he's been a social activist since the get-go.
Right.
So whatever anybody wants to say about him, the bottom line is like if you study unions, like, the sanitation workers of 1968 with Martin Luther King,
Sure.
AFSCME was there. Sure. And you look and read and study about Cesar Chavez. He had a great power in organizing the farm workers, which was something that was unheard of at the time. And so the history of unions where it's just bringing the working class to the table and having a voice, and it's minorities, it's females, it's working class people. That's what's so important, and that's what we need to focus on.
Right. Jackie, you referred obviously correctly to some of the discrimination within unions, but of course unions have been central to the civil rights movement and to many other progressive movements, right?
Yes. Well, we can look at A. Philip Randolph's Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters in the 1920s, barred from all white unions and really concentrated in this job of sleeping car porters. These men created a really powerful and influential union, not only in the workplace, but also politically as well. And of course, A. Philip Randolph was the person who led the March on Washington movement in 1941 to make sure that defense industries were open and non-discriminatory. So there's a really close relationship between union activity on the part of African Americans and politics in this country.
He was also one of the organizers of the 63 March on Washington, right, where Martin Luther King gives his famous I Have a Dream speech. Do you find, Yvonne, that young people really are getting more involved with unions? You made reference to that.
I mean, again, when we went to the ALEC rally that happened here in Austin a couple of weeks ago, it was amazing to see all the young faces. And the thing that I find so, invigorating is that they're connecting world and national issues with unions, having serious issues about taking care of our planet.
Right.
And so the whole wind and solar energy, they're connecting that, and that is connected to jobs. And so you have the New Deal, right? The Green New Deal, which is really imperative because, a lot of people are thinking the negative, thinking, oh, that's going to be a job killer. When in actuality, if you really look at some of the policies that they're trying to push forward to, it's actually going to be a job creator. So that to me is important because for me as a union president, it's about taking care of our workers. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure it's going to be them being able to provide for their families. And so...
And you mean all workers?
All workers.
Even those who aren't members of your
all
union,
workers,
right?
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, people can say that it's about different things, but as a single mom with 2 kids, my job is important.
Sure.
Having insurance for my children is very important. And so these are things that impact me. So outside of that realm, especially when you go to the Capitol and you start hearing other things that I'm like, that does not even apply to me and my family. And what's connected to me and my family are union issues, which is jobs, which is benefits, and which is wages. Those are going to be the top 3 for me. And, everybody should be able to, work to live, not live to work.
Right. Why is it that so many working class people don't see this? There seem to be a lot of working class voters who vote for people who are anti-union.
I think it's very difficult in some workplaces to actually form a union and join one. There are a lot of employers who go out of their way to say to workers, if you join a union, your benefits are going to disappear. We're going to take our production offshore. All sorts of awful things will happen. You're not loyal to the country. We're a company. We're a family here. This is a really bad idea. These campaigns against unions within individual workplaces are quite powerful, and that's one thing. And I think people think, if somehow I lose this job, there are a lot of people who are ready to take my job, and it's we live in a culture that really does not promote the idea that unions are a great thing. I mean, look at all the states that pass right-to-work laws.
Including Texas.
The idea that you can get the benefits from a union, but you don't have to pay the dues, for example. And that helps to erode the influence and the power of the unions. As you were saying, Yvonne, one of the key points about unions is their political clout, the ability to influence elections, to say workers want a voice in this particular election. That takes money, right? And if you don't have the dues, you don't have the money to make that statement. So, I think for workers today, those who are just getting by, those who work in, say, the fast food industry,
right.
Those who are in the gig economy, it's hard. They're just making ends meet, and I think they get a lot of pushback about this idea of joining together in a group, in a union.
Sure.
Well, and I think the term itself, right to work, is deceitful as
Of
it can
course.
get.
Right.
Anybody off the street when they hear right to work, and it's like, that's my
Who's
right to
opposed to
work.
that?
Right.
Yeah.
And little do they know that it's the complete opposite,
Right.
that it's taking away your voice and it's taking away your workers' rights on things that should be an issue. And if you work in an environment where it's the management saying, you keep your mouth shut and just do your job, or you can get fired at will, so to speak. I mean, it's very, there is a group of people out there who are totally anti-union.
Right.
And I think it's important, again, why we should have union history in our schools.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's important that the initiative that I just read, ACLU has a high school coordinator position open, because they're actually trying to get the high school people, mobilized and energized, because it's a very important and a very big deal to be able to do your civic duty in voting.
Right. And I think what's clear in our history is there have always been these conflicts over
Yes.
unions, and unions, like other institutions, they rise and fall and rise again.
Yep.
And it's important for people to understand that history and understand perhaps the necessary tension between the business owners and union workers as such. There is perhaps a balance there that needs to be struck.
People really need to see the facts in that. If you go back and you look at perhaps maybe the last 20 or 30 years, look at how CEO pay has just skyrocketed, and look how stagnant the working pay is. It's just the same. And that right there, I mean, nobody should have to have a debate about anything.
Right.
You're looking at your paycheck when you see numbers like that.
Just to put a number on it, in the last, I think, 30 years, CEO pay has now reached on average 30 times that of a worker, and worker pay has actually stagnated,
And
adjusted for inflation.
Also, what does it say that, there is a rise in public, and a public voice that they do support unions? Because now, recently in the news, you hear all the CEOs from, I don't know if you heard about that, but now they're saying the shareholder is not the priority. They're like concerned about the workers and want to take care. I mean, there's a reason why they're saying and doing that now. I think there really is an increase in the notability of unions. And that's because we have people that are just really upset. They're tired of having to do more than one job.
Right.
I mean, I know people in my family and people in my neighborhood who have to do at least 2 jobs just to make ends meet. And that says something about our workforce.
And, Jeremi, we talk about democracy. Well, most workplaces are not democracies, right? I mean, it is ironic in this country where we like to think that we can help shape our own environment, that workplaces are often tyrannical places.
Yes.
You're told where to be, at what time, how long to do this. In some cases, whether you can take a bathroom break or not, how much time you have for lunch. These are very difficult work sites. People spend a great deal of their working hours in these workplaces, and yet they have very little say over their own lives. And, what is a good way to handle this job? What is a bad way? Most employers say, do it, or we'll find someone else to do it. So I just think the workplace is a kind of ironic place if we talk about democracy.
Sure. And in a sense, attacks on unions are attacks on one of the hinges for some kind of democracy in the workplace.
Exactly, because when it comes to unions, in our general membership meetings and our candidate endorsement screenings, and even at our executive boards, I mean, no decision is made unless it's done in a democratic process where everyone raises their hands and says either yay or nay. That's democracy. It's not one person calling the shots. It's a group effort. It's a team effort.
You didn't have the Electoral
democracy.
College put you in power?
And then also I think I heard something on NPR the other day, and that is that unions actually benefit people who are not even involving themselves in the democratic process of unions, because like unions, even though they represent about 10% of the workforce, still set the wages and the standards for everyone else in the workforce.
Sure.
And that's something that continues to influence everyone.
So, Zachary, are young people like you interested in unions? Is this something you talk about at school? Do you learn about it at school?
I actually, not to sound morbid or anything, but I do think that there is a real lack of understanding of what unions do. I think even young people who were Bernie Sanders supporters or see themselves as very, very progressive, don't really understand unions and see them as very archaic institutions. And I think that that's like a real problem of our education system, because when history is taught, it's not necessarily taught. It's not really the story of progressivism and the birth of unions, and also unions today aren't really taught as much as it used to be. And I think also part of that is that less people are involved in unions, so they're not passing on those values to their kids.
And the image, right, Zachary, for people who want to go into the gig economy, as Jackie said, right, unions don't look like conducive institutions, right?
And no one sees them anymore as I feel like they used to as idealistic institutions. They're seen more as sort of pragmatic ones that often don't work and are over bureaucratic.
So, Yvonne, how are you going to change that? How are you going to continue to attract young people by making your union appear more exciting, more modern?
I can honestly say that, like, since I've been part of AFSCME and our general membership meetings and a lot of the events that we had, I've never seen, more younger faces today than I have in the last 8-10 years. And I think that's important. I think it's important, like, when you have somebody who's in a leadership position, to send that elevator back down and bring somebody up with you. You have to have somebody that's going to be able to carry that torch. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are probably disgruntled with the politics going on, because, I keep hearing like changing of the guard. It's, you have especially from the Democratic side of it, the Democratic Party side of it, you have like the progressives, but then you also have what people call the establishment. And I think it's important that, solidarity is everyone coming together.
Yes.
And so that's what I try and make very important with our union is like, we have all these different political beliefs, but at the end of the day, we have to come together and decide what's best for us as workers. And so one of the things that we just started, this is our third time doing it. We have a Vote Pack conference. Our first one we had was in 2015, and we had the Honorable Nina Turner. She came in, she flew in from Ohio, and she just raised the roof. She was talking about the benefit of unions, that if you pay taxes, you should be part of a union, because you can't just say, I don't want to get involved in politics, because that's not my cup of tea. But if you pay taxes, you should be caring about what's going on with everyday politics. And so she was amazing. And then we also had what we do is with our conferences, we have it every other year. So we have it close to when elections are happening. The one we had in 2017, we had Representative Joaquin Castro come in, and he was very informative, and he was talking about the importance and the need for people to go to their neighborhoods and go to the communities and get people involved with the voting process. And so I think that's what my stance is going to be coming up this election, because in 2018 we had some elections that were just so close. Sure. We had Gina Ortiz-Jones, who almost beat Representative Hurd, and now he just announced his retirement. I mean, she barely lost by 920 something votes. And so we had, Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz, it was like less than 2.5 percentage points that he lost. So we have those elections and the reason why I'm saying these names is because these are people that we we've had in the past that are supportive of unions. And so again, it's not, which party I'm going to go with.
Right.
I'm not going there because that's not what I'm about. I'm about who's the public official that's going to stand up in front of my union members and say, I stand with you on these issues. And that's how we get your support, nothing else. And so November 2nd, we're having our third annual Vote Pack Conference. It's going to be on a Saturday, November 2nd from 9 to 3. And again, our union members love Nina Turner, so we're bringing her back. And then in the afternoon, we have a panel that's going to be completely focused on Battleground Texas 2020 because of the fact that, we're so close. We're right there to getting public officials that are going to be representing us. We have MJ Hagar, who's going to be in attendance. She's going to be on the panel. We also have Mike Siegel, who was running for District 10, and he was another one that was a very close race. So I wanted to make sure that we brought back those public officials that almost won those votes, and we want to see if we can put them over because they're running again, and that's important to us.
That's really insightful about the political importance of unions. Jackie, what are your thoughts? You've seen over time as a historian how unions have adjusted to different generations in terms of their diversity, in terms of the workplace. What do you think?
Well, I am hopeful that we have a new economy now, right? I mean, we have a more service-based economy, and we have more women in the workplace. The workplaces are more diverse now. And so that is reflected, I think, in the union movement, and that's very hopeful. It is a concern about the forces arrayed against unions. They're very powerful. They're not democratic. And they really do worry about the bottom line and feel that as advocates for working people, unions are a problem for them. And I am aware of this recent statement by companies, the shareholders should not be our only concern anymore. But that's kind of baked into corporations in this country. Cut production costs. Well, what is the best way to do that? Usually it's either to take the factory or overseas or else mechanize, get rid of workers, cut their wages. So there is a kind of perverse logic to this degradation, this race to the bottom when it comes to workers. On the other hand, I think, unions are really the key to democracy, to the fight against poverty, to a truly democratic country.
Mm-hmm. Zachary, do you think that's a message that can get across to young people?
I think so, and I think the way to do it is to show how innovative unions are as institutions, because I think part of the problem is that today unions are seen as very stagnant and almost old institutions, filled with old people who are not as vibrant as the populations that are growing up in our country. And I think that's something that's a stereotype that unions and educators need to try and
That's why we need young leaders like Yvonne, right?
I am not young, but I appreciate that you're saying that. But I wanted to tell you real quick, one of the really energized organizations that are going on right now locally is called Y'all.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of them, but
I've heard the statement.
It's Young Activist Labor Leaders.
Oh, wow.
And it's a great organization. They have an annual conference every February. I attended it this past February. Greg Kassar was there. They had the AFSCME president from Colorado fly in, and they had amazing workshops. But I'm telling you guys, it's pretty powerful. There's like a room of at least, 200, 300 attendees, and they're all in their 30s, and it's a great feeling.
That's great.
It's a beautiful thing to see, but that's what I'm pushing. I'm just like, people have to care about what's going on. And I think that's what I'm saying. There has to be a connection with the younger generation here and now. And I see it. I see it at our meetings, and I see it at the rallies and also at the marches that we go to. And it's a positive for me. It's definitely a positive, because you hit it right on the nail. I want to connect with somebody that I see that looks like me. Yes. So yes, I want to see women. Yes, I want to see minorities. And yes, I want to see, the young people showing up on the streets.
And if young people want control of their workplaces, whether they're tech entrepreneurs or fast food workers, they need to go out and take ownership of these institutions. These unions are their life raft.
And I've seen them speak, and they're very vocal. And that's the part to me that democracy is important, because it brings everyone together we're bigger in numbers and solidarity, but it's the fact that they're holding the person in front of them with accountability.
Yep.
And that's what democracy is all about, really. You either do your job or elections have consequences,
Well, I think that's a perfect note for us to close on. Before we close, however, since we are discussing this week in particular unions and respect for workers, Zachary and I want to make sure that we thank all of the people who make it possible each week for us to put on this podcast. So, Zachary, do you want to kick us off? Maybe you do the first two names?
So here's our current audio engineering staff, Brittany Marsh and Jared Marswatch.
And then we have a longer list of many other full-time staff members, some of whom are also students, who help us week in and week out. Certainly at the top of that list is Jacob Weiss. Jacob is actually the person who oversees a lot of what we do and trains a lot of people. We couldn't do this without Jacob. Also, Will Kirstner. Will Kirstner also helps with my online course. Zachary, you want to name a few others?
Yeah, we have Sophia Salter, Noah Keller, Kaya Daniel, Lydia Fortuna.
And then we have Ian Herrera, and Evan Scherer. Thank you. We know how important your work is to us, and even though you refuse to have your voices heard on the podcast, we want everyone to know that you are essential to everything we do, and we are grateful for all of your hard work.
Very appreciative. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. This is great.
Thank you for being with us and discussing unions and why they're so important for our democracy today. This
Power
is
to the
democracy.
people.
Power to the people. Thank you.
This podcast is produced by the Liberal Arts Development Studio and the College of Liberal Arts at the University of Texas at Austin.
The music in this episode was written and recorded by Harrison Lemke, and you can find his music at harrisonlemke.com.
Subscribe and stay tuned for a new episode every Thursday featuring new perspectives on democracy.